think it's difficult to put into words the influence that Pat Summitt has made on the game of women's basketball.
I grew up going to banquets and coaches' meetings with my mom, and it was always a joy for me to carry around her briefcase or answer her phone or whatever I could do.
She was hard-nosed, she was tough, she just wanted excellence at all times.
That's really, when you got a chance, you got a chance. Every game's played, you got a chance to get better. Let's get better right now. Let's go.
Without Pat, I highly doubt women's basketball would be where it is today in terms of the prominence on the national scene and the quality between the men and women's programs.
She is one of the greatest pioneers in our game, if not the greatest, in terms of her reach.
There was a side of Pat that a lot of people didn't see. Very caring person, wanted to make sure you get it right, but wanted to make sure that you knew her love for you was there with basketball and without basketball.
1,098 wins. She's the winningest coach in men's or women's college basketball. 8 national titles.
I don't even remember what championship game it was, but I remember my mom wanting me to climb up a ladder and help her cut down the nets, and I'm scared of heights, and so I did not want to do it, but she won the national championship in 96, 97, 98, so I had to get used to it, I guess, going up there, but I did not want to go up there every single time.
And the number that she is most proud of is 100% graduation for those student athletes that played for her for 4 years.
She is like our second mom. She has taken care of us. She has helped us grow, not only as basketball players, but as women in the world to be successful.
Out of all Mom's accomplishments, I'm most proud of her influence on other people. And almost every Lady Vol right now is a successful businesswoman or coach.
She is tremendous by the numbers, but she's an even better person.
It was that 2010-2011 season when we first started noticing things, and whereas she could always multitask better than anybody, you know, putting on makeup while driving and talking on the phone and everything.
Over the last few years, I think we all saw some signs in terms of her not being able to do 7 to 10 things at the same time. You know, maybe doing more like 2, 3, or 4 like we were, you know, something normal for the average person, but that wasn't normal for her.
Yeah, it was kind of scary. I mean, it was, it
definitely.
But we talked about it, and there was, should we go get it checked out? You know, we didn't really know how to do, we didn't know what it was, and so it was kind of an invisible opponent when we first saw the signs.
Pat Summitt came to the Mayo Clinic as a patient in 2011, and she came for a question of forgetfulness and problems that she'd been having. When Pat first came, Tyler commented that he had noticed that his mom was not quite in control of the total situation. For example, in a game, she would typically be known for her ability to monitor what's going on the floor, on the bench, in the big picture, and it was clear that she was starting to lose that ability. Now, this was noticeable in her because she had been so adept at that skill that now she was losing that particular function.
When we first got to Mayo, they did everything from head to toe. We had to check all that stuff out, and it was a lot of tests.
We came to the conclusion that she most likely had a dementia.
You could kind of tell from his face that he knew what was wrong, and he said it was early onset dementia, Alzheimer's type, in the mild to moderate stages. And then he explained what that meant and how to move forward.
So we called it dementia due to Alzheimer's disease, and because her age, 59 at the time, it was young onset, because Alzheimer's disease is typically a disorder of older years, 70s and 80s. And I said, this is quite unusual at your age to have this, but at the same time, that does not mean that life is over by any means. I think that you can fight this, and I think Pat and Tyler took this as a challenge.
Oh gosh, at first I was like, why me? And I think after I really thought about, now let's get a game plan. That kind of, I kind of had this right here at first. And I thought, well, this is what it is. Now we got to work with it and, got to do what we got to do.
And that's a typical reaction of Pat. She's competitive. She got angry and then she got competitive. And then she's going to do everything she can to try to beat the disease.
Alzheimer's disease is a degenerative disease of the brain, and by that we mean that the nerve cells in the brain just aren't working as well as they formerly did. Ultimately, it affects one's ability to remember, to think, to plan, and then will affect your personality later in time, such that you actually become somewhat of a different person than you formerly were.
The diagnosis, even though it was bad, it was also a good thing because, hey, now we know what we're fighting.
Exactly. It is what it is, and you make it what it will be.
We're gonna fight this thing. It may be an unbeatable opponent, but we're gonna fight.
Tyler Summitt is a chip off the old block. Tyler is just like her.
Hey, get over to that side. Epi, get open. Serena's gonna go back door. Chelsea!
And I remember going in and seeing him coach for the first time.
So we're meeting right here. She stops, we meet. That's when I make my change of speed.
And I was so excited. I was so proud. I felt like I was watching my little brother.
Keep your eyes up, Katie. You gotta keep your eyes up, Katie.
He is just like her.
Be on balance on that shot.
He's so detailed on every single play. He doesn't let a play go by without correcting something if necessary.
I still look high-low. I'm not looking down here. I catch. Is a high-low there? Can I rip through? No, that's when I pass.
There are no shortcuts when Tyler Summitt is coaching.
I grew up the first 20 years of my life watching my mom coach and win championships and hold players accountable. And I think it'll be very similar, me and her.
Yeah, definitely.
He has become Pat's rock. He pays very close attention to his mom and to what they want for her future and for his. He's taken up an enormous role for a young person.
He guards his mom's coaching legacy and her reputation. He's kind of the keeper of the flame in that respect.
They are a powerful team, and he is his mother's greatest joy.
So when someone develops the early forgetfulness of Alzheimer's disease, a person will typically talk about forgetting things that are recently experienced, recent events, old memories, things that happened decades ago, maybe where you went to school when you were growing up. All of those memories are well preserved far into the disease. The typical person, say in the moderate stages of Alzheimer's disease, really is unaware that anything is wrong with him or her. They actually lack the ability to have insight into their own situation.
And so I called our financial advisor, our lawyers, had to get them on the same page. The doctors had to get them on the same page. And so really had to spring into action with everything and then go public with it.
I knew what I was dealing with, and obviously Tyler's right there with me. So, I thought that was the best thing to do.
Pat announced to the world August the 23rd, 2011, about her diagnosis and about her next challenge.
Throughout my career, I have always made it a point that my life and our basketball program were an open book. With that in mind, I have something to share with my Tennessee family. After consulting with my local physicians, I decided to visit the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Earlier this year, the doctors at the Mayo Clinic diagnosed me with an early onset dementia, Alzheimer's type, at the age of 59.
And that announcement was extremely courageous.
When you think about who she's been publicly for so many years, and to put herself in that position of, frankly, vulnerability, is incredibly courageous and incredibly selfless.
You can't believe this woman that is so strong that you're used to seeing on a pedestal, going 100 miles per hour, you know, just like a god of basketball, and to know that she's sick, it was just a very sad feeling.
Well, I just thought it was important, you know, and because there's a lot of other people out there, and a lot just like me. So, you know, that's why I wanted to get it out and come public, you know, rather than hide behind the door. So just be honest.
Everybody looks at that one act and they think, oh, why did she go public? But that's just what she's always done.
It was honest, it was pure, and it was Pat Summitt.
There are two forms of Alzheimer's disease in general. One is truly inherited, meaning that it runs in families on a 50-50 basis. The vast majority of Alzheimer's disease, however, is so-called sporadic Alzheimer's disease. If people have had a rather sedentary lifestyle, if they've had, say, vascular risk factors, meaning high blood pressure, diabetes, smokers, some of those factors can increase a person's risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. The defining characteristics of Alzheimer's disease pertain to what are called plaques and tangles in the brain. So if someone passes away and you look at their brain under the microscope and you see one protein called amyloid, which really is the major constituent of the plaque, the other protein is a protein called tau, and that forms the tangle. So those two characteristics have to be present in the brain at the time of autopsy to clearly define Alzheimer's disease.
We've been so blessed to have the best help in the country, Dr. Petersen at Mayo and others, and just the cutting edge. And you really see that they're working so hard on this thing.
When we talk about treating Alzheimer's disease today, we talk about two different aspects. One, of course, is pharmacologic or drug treatment. And there are 4 drugs that have been approved in the United States and are largely available worldwide to treat the disease. But these drugs really do not alter the ultimate outcome. They don't change what's going to happen eventually. They help with the symptoms, but they're not what's called disease modifying. Probably one of the largest areas of research right now in Alzheimer's disease pertains to the development of disease modifying drugs. These are ones that will actually affect the outcome, delay the onset, slow the progression.
I think the thing about Alzheimer's is that it comes at an age where there's probably going to be other problems that are going on with health. And so in Mom's case, the rheumatoid arthritis. And I think that's something that people don't realize. It's not just Alzheimer's, it's the entire body. Every person is different, every case is different. That's the thing about Alzheimer's is no 2 cases are the same, and perhaps that's what makes research so hard.
Well, unfortunately, Alzheimer's disease is a progressive disorder and ultimately a fatal disease. As such, it will progress, but through lifestyle modifications, by our ability to exercise, stay intellectually active, socially engaged in our families, we may be able to slow some of that process down.
It's funny, it's like Mom's in training. You know, she'll get up, she'll have her coffee, and then she's on her iPad or she's doing puzzles.
I like being on the iPad. Keeps me sharp. I've got crossword puzzles and stuff like that. So.
We gotta throw some math in there every now and then too, don't we?
Oh yeah, I love math. Not.
She's walking the dogs. There's always somebody in the house, so she's getting that social time, exercising, and then you got to make her rest every now and then because she'll never lay down.
I think the one thing that I have to continue to do is, you know, stay busy. You know, I think that's important.
She continues to watch films of basketball games and try to put them together. Here's what we did here, here's what we should have done.
I know what my opponent is, and I know what I have to do, and so, you know, that's something now that I feel a lot better about it. You know, I've got a lot of friends, and they keep me going too.
As of today, the reality is we don't know that there are any bona fide preventive measures for Alzheimer's disease. That is, there really are not any drugs that prevent it, foods, supplements, or even behavioral activities. Aerobic exercise has been shown to perhaps delay the onset of cognitive impairment, maybe slow the progression of cognitive impairment once it's present.
There is a few studies that have suggested that vigorous activity can change these proteins, which ultimately can help one's memory and also make basic changes in their ability to function, even with some symptoms associated with Alzheimer's disease.
Tyler and I both are strong in our faith, and it's been tremendous.
Read our Bibles every morning, we pray, and that's just what you got to do.
You know, I think that is something that you can hold on to always.
Mom paved the way for so many women, not just in sports, but in their careers. And now God's given us a new platform with Alzheimer's. And so I think winning is not necessarily a championship anymore as much as it is making a difference in the lives of others.
Someone's diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, there's a variety of reactions. Some people will just take it with a total defeatist and will withdraw and stay very private, which is fine. That's an individual decision. Pat, however, chose just the opposite. She took this as a challenge. I'm going to go forward and do the best I can, and I'm also going to help the next person in line.
She wanted to go after the cure. She's a competitor. She is a winner. She wanted to fight and find the cure. And we were able to launch the foundation just a few months after we began the project. We knew we had a long way to go, but it was important to get started while Pat was still on that sideline.
The Pat Summitt Foundation is a grant-making foundation, and there are three main areas of focus. One is research for a cure. Two is education and awareness of Alzheimer's disease, and then support services that are provided for patients, caregivers, and families.
It was her vision, always as a coach, to be known as one of the greatest recruiters in basketball, and she was. And now, she's one of the greatest recruiters in science.
And one thing with the Pat Summitt Foundation that we wanted to do was have that fierce courage and come out and tell people, hey, it's okay. This wasn't your fault that you had this diagnosis. It's okay to come out. It's not embarrassing.
Your support and dedication to the We Back Pat campaign has helped raise more than $150,000.
Even if we don't find a cure next year, we know we're progressing. And progress is better than standing still and wishing you could do something.
It's estimated that there are probably over 30 million people in the world who currently have Alzheimer's disease. In the United States, it's estimated that over 5 million people have Alzheimer's disease. Some people believe that Alzheimer's disease may be the defining disease of our generation. That is, because the baby boomers now are aging into the period of risk, with approximately 10,000 people turning 65 in the United States on a daily basis, we are going to be overwhelmed if we don't develop effective therapies for this condition.
Coach Summitt's great. She comes to practice pretty much every day. She loves being in the gym. I mean, after all, this is what she's done for her whole life. So I think that gives her a sense of calmness.
We wanted her to stay involved in our program as much as possible. I think try to keep her involved as much as we can with this program, the one she built. I think it's a positive for us, and it's a huge positive for her.
Then I think she just has that fight to her, and the sense of humor comes out, because she say, you know, one day I'm gonna forget that I have Alzheimer's.
I think a major thrust in Alzheimer's disease research right now is toward earlier and earlier identification of the disease process. So a great deal of research that's going on is now aimed at identifying what are called biomarkers. So these are markers in the blood, in the spinal fluid, in the brain, in a normal person that may give us a clue that that person is at increased risk of developing the disease in the future, because those are the people in whom we need to intervene to try to prevent the disease from developing in the first place. And we're doing MRI scans in a very sophisticated fashion, looking at the regions of the brain that are affected with the disease very early on. We're also doing PET scanning to image this amyloid protein in the brain of normal people before they develop any kind of symptoms, because if amyloid is a therapeutic target, we'll want to know who possesses that prior to their development of symptoms. The earlier we can detect the clinical symptoms of the disease, the earlier we will be able to intervene and stop any damage from being done in the brain. If we can delay the onset of Alzheimer's disease in an individual by, say, 5 years, and/or we can slow the progression of the disease once the symptom starts, that's huge. That will preserve a person's functional ability if the disease can be delayed in onset, slowed in progression. It's estimated now in the United States that we spend about $200 billion a year caring for people with Alzheimer's disease. That is anticipated to reach $1 trillion a year by the year 2050.
If you simply put off the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, say 3 to 5 years, you could change the natural history of the disease itself. We could decrease the population of people with Alzheimer's disease by the metropolitan population of Atlanta, for example.
We've made a great deal of progress in developing animal models for Alzheimer's disease, such that we can now take a human gene from families who have what's called familial Alzheimer's disease, where this amyloid protein's deposited in the brain. We can take the gene out of people, put it into a mouse, and those mice will develop that same protein in the brain as if the mice were developing Alzheimer's disease. Since we have an animal model that has this amyloid protein in the brain, we can develop various therapeutics, drugs, to try to remove that protein from the brain, or perhaps we can block it being deposited in the brain. All kinds of combination therapies can be tested in animals relatively quickly, and then we translate that into humans. We know so much more about the disease now than we knew, say, 5 or 8 years ago, that I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to detect the various targets in the disease in a given individual, and then develop therapies that will hit each one of those targets. I think ultimately in Alzheimer's disease, we're going to need a cocktail of drugs that will treat the various aspects. But we know so much about it right now that I'm hopeful we're going to be there very soon.
I think the thing about Alzheimer's that I've learned is, even though you may be losing some memories, there's no reason to not go and make new ones. And we try to do that, and we talk every day, and we always are making new memories and not worried so much about losing them as it is, hey, let's enjoy the time that we do have.
Because this is her new legacy. This is the bigger legacy, than winning a basketball game. Defeating Alzheimer's is the end goal for Pat.
Alzheimer's has never seen an opponent like Pat Summitt. She will be part of that team when the cure is found. She's an inspiration for all of us. I think she, through every day, she teaches us something new.
She is going to fight to the end. She's going to swing, kick, claw, and I would not be surprised by her spunkiness and her feistiness if she wouldn't be the one to beat Alzheimer's.
You're eventually going to be touched by Alzheimer's. No matter who you are, no matter how fortunate you are, you're eventually going to be touched, family member, friend. I just encourage people to get involved. Again, whether it's the Pat Summitt Foundation or something else, get involved with this fight, because eventually you're going to be touched, and that's just the way it is. We're moving forward, but we need help, and we can do this.